Meantime, there is new fallout in the White House push for increased gun control laws after Vice President Joe Biden shared some firearms advice for women who are worried about their safety. The Vice President was answering questions yesterday in a forum organized by Parents Magazine when one woman asked about a possible federal ban on assault weapons. Here's the Vice President's suggestion for self-defense.
If you want to protect yourself, get a double-barrel shotgun, have the shells, a 12-gauge shotgun, and I promise you, as I told my wife, we live in an area that's wooded and somewhat secluded. I said, Jill, if there's ever a problem, just walk out on the balcony here or walk out, put that double-barrel shotgun and fire 2 blasts outside the house. I promise you, who's ever coming in is not going to, you don't need an AR-15. It's harder to aim, it's harder to use, and in fact, you don't need 30 rounds to protect yourself. Buy a shotgun. Buy a shotgun.
Oh, boy. Joining me now to discuss is Steve Hayes of the Weekly Standard and Pete Hegseth, CEO of Concerned Veterans for America. So let me start with you on this, Steve. The right is ticked off because they say Joe Biden doesn't know diddly about his guns. And the left is ticked off because they say, and let me put it in the words of Bill Maher, oh, so the Liberal Party loves guns too, just different ones. And then somebody else goes on to say, you're not helping, Joe. So he's displeased both sides. Your thoughts on why he went there?
That's a good question. I mean, it was interesting to read the transcript of that chat that he did with Facebook and Parents Magazine, where he said that he wasn't expecting these kinds of questions from people who read Parents Magazine, that he has copies of Parents Magazine in the Vice President's residence. But I don't think Joe Biden did the White House any favors necessarily, because what he said can be so easily and I think roundly mocked. And I say that as somebody who's not a gun expert myself. But at the same time, if you strip away sort of all of the silliness that involves Joe Biden's answer and sort of the questions that you're hearing from gun rights advocates today, the Vice President ultimately made an argument in favor of ammunition-based defense for a home invasion. That's something that I think gun rights advocates might like to hear from this White House, especially in light of the fact that we've seen growing out of state legislatures and out of other proposals that we've gotten either from Congress or around the country, some real, I think, over-the-line requests or efforts to restrict guns.
Yeah, that's what the left is saying. I mean, that Maher went on to call it just a gun control charade, and he thought the Vice President called attention to that. Pete, I do want to talk to you because folks on the right are saying, in addition to all that, he's wrong about his facts. And although some people who want gun control have tried to demonize this AR-15 because it has been used in some terrible events, he is not correct that it is harder to aim and harder to use.
Yeah, I mean, you can't help but watch that clip and wonder what in the world Vice President Biden knows about firearms. More difficult to fire, more difficult to use. If I don't know, Megan, if you've ever fired a shotgun.
I have.
You know how the recoil, the kick.
I got a bruise on my arm.
You better have it right here on your chest and really anchor it in order to absorb it and then fire it accurately, as opposed to an AR-15, which is effectively the civilian replica of an M16 or an M4, which I carried and our guys carried in Iraq and Afghanistan, which is made for accuracy, made for everyday use so that it minimizes kick to maximize accuracy. These shotguns, and then you got to think about the pressure. So Dr. Jill Biden's going to be on her balcony with 2 shots, and those 2 shots are going to be accurate, so she doesn't need to reload again, as opposed to what you would need with an AR-15. It's an absurd comment, which I think exemplifies a lot of the approach he's taken on this issue.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, the other people, even the Washington Times, Steve, is pointing out today, you fire 2 shots, you know, the warning shots, and then you're effectively dead if your attacker
Right.
comes up and has a weapon, because your bullets are gone.
That's the fun.
It's not like a semi-automatic weapon.
Yeah.
Right. That's the fundamental problem with what he said, is you fire those 2 shots and then you have to reload. I mean, I think this is part of the, if you take a step back and look at the big picture here, this is what happens when you have people who aren't, largely who aren't familiar with guns or as familiar with guns as many sort of gun rights advocates and pro-Second Amendment representatives try to make laws to govern things that they don't know much about. I mean, I think that's the fundamental problem. That's part of the reason that there's such a disconnect in in this national debate over what's going to happen next and what's going to happen in the aftermath of Sandy Hook.
And the AR-15, according to a lot of gun shop owners, Pete, is actually more, believe it or not, of a mainstream weapon in the weapons community because they say it is so easy. But we have the issue here again of one of the politicians on this issue telling us what we need. Women in particular. This is what I will tell you what you need to defend yourself. We just saw this with that guy, that state lawmaker out of Colorado yesterday. He was telling women, you know, that they may be too confused to understand whether they're about to be raped or not. And there's just there's a layer here of you know, these lawmakers telling us what we need and what we'll understand, and they know better.
Absolutely, and it's a giant veil of ignorance. They have no idea what they're talking about. Probably have never handled an AR, and they don't know the difference between an AR-15 and an M16 and what an automatic or a semi-automatic weapon does and what that means and how it functions. They just see a big, scary black weapon that must be banned because it's scary looking, and they don't think about that female who can carry that AR-15, can fire it accurately, and feel safe because of it, as opposed to a shotgun, which might be effective in close range and certainly is in many combat situations, but when you in longer distances or when you need multiple rounds, it's not going to be there the way an AR-15 would for you. So they don't know what they're talking about, and you're right. They're making these choices from their air-conditioned offices in Washington, D.C. with no information and not actually talking to people who have handled these weapon systems and know how to use them.
Well, typical Joe Biden, he gets it from both sides. He pleases and displeases everyone. Steve, Pete, thank you.
Thanks, Megyn.
Thanks, Megyn.